Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we're taking a little journey down history lane. Not the history of a country or an age, but the history of the universe. And it's quite profound. We have 4 student guests with us today. Faith. Oh my God, I'm going to forget. I know Kelly, Faith, Gabby, and Sophie. Okay, they came from a college campus, a new program that we have. We go out we call this the conch shell of Maya, the conch shell of illusion, because every time we try to get serious, the thing rings or blows, and calling us to come and enjoy the oil that it's carrying from here to there. About, I don't know how many times a day? 5, 6 times a day. Yeah, not good. Anyway, here we are. Hare Krishna. Some of the drivers of the trains are a little bit more kind, and some of them just, you know, like when you're driving and somebody gets behind you and they're in road rage, they just, you know. Anyway, we tolerate. All right, so let's go. Well, let's get into Srimad-Bhagavatam. But before we do, we read a prayer or a series of verses written by a very, very deep devotee in our line, the senior disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was the most recent appearance of Krishna on the earth. That's 500 years ago in Bengal. And his senior disciple was named Sanatan Goswami. And he wrote a prayer about this book that we're about to read. So if you listen to it very carefully, it'll help you to understand the depth of what we're reading. Got it? Okay, here we go. It goes like this. Sarva Shastabdipi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad-Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshak Sharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Man Nisdadaga Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin adini chochatakara hanamunchagadachin mam premnarit kandayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, in this section, we're reading from the 5th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The Srimad-Bhagavatam has 12 cantos. It's a really big book. And in this section, there's a great liberated soul who is explaining things to a king. His name is Rahugana. And he's been instructing him for some time, for a few chapters now. But now he's getting right down to the, as we say, the nitty-gritty. Do you have that? Nitty-gritty? Okay. It's a big thing when I was young. Okay. Text 1, chapter 13, Canto 5. Further instructions of Jada Bharata to Maharaj Rahugana. We all got the right places?
Oh, the bookmark's on the page. Thank you.
Chapter 13, text 1. Got it? We almost got it. Okay. Well, only one of you have a hat on. I was going to say hold on to your hats, but yeah, hold on to your hat. Let's go. Okay. Jada Bharata, who had fully realized Brahman. Brahman means the absolute truth. Continued. My dear King Rahugana, the living entity wanders on the path of the material world, which is very difficult for him to traverse, and he accepts repeated birth and death. Being captivated by the material world, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. These three words mean goodness, passion, and ignorance. The living entity can see only the three fruits of activities under the spell of material nature. These fruits are auspicious, inauspicious, and mixed. He thus becomes attached to religion, economic development, sense gratification, and the monistic theory of liberation, merging with the Supreme. He works very hard, day and night, exactly like a merchant who enters a forest to acquire some articles to sell later for profit. However, he cannot really achieve happiness within this material world. Purport. One can very easily understand how difficult and insurmountable the path of sense gratification is. Not knowing what the path of sense gratification is, one becomes implicated in the repetition of birth and accepts different types of bodies again and again. Thus one suffers in material existence. In this life one may think that he is very happy being an American, Indian, Englishman, or German, but in the next life one has to accept another body among 8,400,000 species. The next body has to be immediately accepted according to karma. One will be forced to accept a certain type of body, and protesting will not help. That is the stringent law of nature. Due to the living entity's ignorance of his eternal blissful life, he becomes attracted to material activities under the spell of Maya. Maya means illusion. In this world, he can never experience happiness, yet he works very hard to do so. This is called Maya, or illusion. Text 2. O King Rahugana, in this forest of material existence, there are 6 very powerful plunderers. When the conditioned soul enters the forest to acquire some material gain, the 6 plunderers misguide him. Thus the conditioned merchant does not know how to spend his money, and it is taken away by these plunderers. Like tigers, jackals, and other ferocious animals in a forest, that are ready to take away a lamb from the custody of its protector The wife and children enter the heart of the merchant and plunder him in so many ways. You guys are kids, so you know when you need money, you go to daddy, and daddy gives the money, and that's the way it is. Right? Oh, if it only could be like that. Okay, that's the problem. Purport. In the forest, there are many plunderers, dacoits, jackals, and tigers. The jackals are compared to one's wife and children. In the dead of night, jackals cry very loudly, and similarly, one's wife and children in this material world also cry like jackals. The children say, "Father, this is wanted, give me this. I am your dear son." Or the wife says, "I am your dear wife, please give me this. This is now needed." In this way, one is plundered by the thieves in the forest. Not knowing, this is of course allegorical story. These are similes, they're examples. Not knowing the aim of human life, one is constantly being misguided. The aim of life is Vishnu, nate vidu swarta gatim hi Vishnum. Everyone works very hard to earn money, but no one knows that his real self-interest is in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of spending money for advancing the Krishna consciousness movement, one spends his hard-earned money on clubs, brothels, liquor, slaughterhouses, and so forth. Due to sinful activities, one becomes implicated in the process of transmigration and thus has to accept one body after another. Being thus absorbed in a distressed condition, one never attains happiness. Text 3. Now this means in the material world, happiness is temporary. Whatever we get to enjoy from however many years we can, eventually and inevitably, they're taken away. And eventually our own body is taken away. But we're not trained when we're young to think like that. You know, it's only when we get old like me that we think like that. But we're trying to teach everyone to think like that, not in a way that we become morose or fatalistic, but realistic. Let's prepare. We get an insurance policy, you know, or life insurance policy. And then what happens? Then we die, and whoever got the life insurance, theirs okay, but what about us? Where are we? And nobody's telling us about that. Just the insurance company says, give me the premium, and then your kids and your family will be okay when you die. But what about you? They don't think about that. We mean to think about that. Text 3. In this forest there are dense bowers composed of thickets, or of bushes, grass, and creepers. In these bowers, the conditioned soul is always disturbed by cruelly biting mosquitoes, envious people. Sometimes he sees an imaginary palace in the forest, and sometimes he is bewildered by seeing a fleeting fiend or ghost which appears like a meteor in the sky. And if you don't, you can just go to the next movie that comes out, and then you see it, even if you're purport. The material household is actually a whole of fruitive activity. To earn a livelihood, one engages in different industries and trades, and sometimes one performs great sacrifices to go to higher planetary systems. Apart from this, at least everyone is engaged in earning a livelihood in some profession or occupation. In these dealings, one has to meet many undesirable people, and their behavior is compared to the biting of mosquitoes. This creates very undesirable conditions. Even in the midst of these disturbances, one imagines that he is going to construct a grand house and live there permanently, although he knows he cannot. Gold is compared to a quickly fleeting fiend which appears like a meteor in the sky. It displays itself for a moment and then is gone. Generally, karmis are attracted to gold or money, but these are compared to herein to ghosts and witches. Text 4. My dear king, the merchant on the forest path of the material world, his intelligence, victimized by home, wealth, relatives, and so forth, runs from one place to another in search of success. Sometimes his eyes are covered by the dust of a whirlwind. That is to say, in his lust, he is captivated by the beauty of his wife, especially during her menstrual period. Thus his eyes are blinded, and he cannot see where to go or where he is going, what he is doing. Purport. It is said that the household attraction resides in the wife because sex is the center of household life. Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukham hitucham. A materialistic person, making his wife the center of attraction, works very hard day and night. His only enjoyment in material life is sexual intercourse. Therefore, karmis are attracted to women or friends or wives. Indeed, they cannot work without sex. Under the circumstances, the wife is compared to a whirlwind, especially during her menstrual period. Those who strictly follow the rules and regulations of householder life engage in sex only once a month at the end of the menstrual period. As one looks forward to this opportunity, his eyes are overwhelmed by the beauty of his wife. Thus it is said that the whirlwind covers the eyes with dust. Such a lusty person does not know that all his material activities are being observed by different demigods, especially the sun god, and are being recorded for the karma of one's next body. Astrological calculations are called Jyotish Shastra, because the Jyoti, or effulgence, in the material world comes from the different stars and planets. The science is called Jyotish Shastra, the science of the luminaries. By the calculations of Jyotish, our future is indicated. In other words, all the luminaries, the stars, sun and moon, witness the activities of the conditioned soul. Thus he is awarded a particular type of body. A lusty person whose eyes are covered by the dust of the whirlwind of material existence does not at all consider that his activities are being observed by different stars and planets and are being recorded. Not knowing this, the conditioned soul commits all kinds of sinful activities for the satisfaction of his lusty desires. Text 5. Wandering in the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul sometimes hears an invisible cricket making harsh sounds, and his ears become very much aggrieved. Sometimes his heart is pained by the sounds of owls, which are just like the harsh words of his enemies. Sometimes he takes shelter of a tree that has no fruits or flowers. He approaches such a tree due to his strong appetite, and thus he suffers. He would like to acquire water, but he is simply illusioned by a mirage, and he runs after it. Purport. In Srimad-Bhagavatam it is said that the Bhagavat philosophy is meant for people who are completely free from envy, paramo nirmatsaranam. The material world is full of envious people. Even within one's inner circle, there is much backbiting, and this is compared to the sound vibration of a cricket in the forest. One cannot see the cricket, but one hears its sounds and thus becomes aggrieved. When one takes to Krishna consciousness, one always hears unpalatable words from relatives. We're laughing because we all went through it in the beginning. This is the nature of the world. One cannot avoid mental distress due to the backbiting of envious people. Of course, now in politics, everybody's finding the fault of everyone else, and they just broadcast it. The internet has given us facility to know what everybody's doing all over the world at every moment, and therefore everybody's always, agitated. Being very much aggrieved, this is the nature of the world. One cannot avoid mental distress due to the backbiting of envious people. Being very much aggrieved, sometimes one goes to a sinful person for help, but he has no means to help because he has no intelligence. Thus, the living entity is disappointed. This is like running after a mirage in the desert in an effort to find water. Such activities do not produce any tangible results. Due to being directed by the illusory energy, a conditioned soul suffers in so many ways. Text 6. Sometimes the conditioned soul jumps into a shallow river, or being short of food grains, He goes to beg food from people who are not at all charitable. Sometimes he suffers from the burning heat of household life, which is like a forest fire. And sometimes he becomes sad to have his wealth, which is as dear as life, plundered by kings in the name of heavy income taxes. Yes, purport. When one is hot due to the scorching sun, one sometimes jumps into a river to gain relief. However, if the river is almost dried up and the water is too shallow, one may break his bones by jumping in. The conditioned soul is always experiencing miserable conditions. Sometimes his efforts to get help from friends are exactly like jumping into a dry river. By such actions, he does not derive any benefit. He only breaks his bones. Sometimes, suffering from a shortage of food, one may go to a person who is neither able to give charity nor willing to do so. Sometimes one is stationed in household life, which is compared to a forest fire, samsara, dava, nalalida loka. When a man is heavily taxed by the government, he becomes very sad. Heavy taxation obliges one to hide his income, but despite this endeavor, the government agents are often so vigilant and strong that they take all the money away anyway. And the conditioned soul becomes very much aggrieved. Thus people are trying to become happy within the material world. But this is like trying to be happy in a forest fire. No one need go to a forest to set it ablaze. Fire takes place automatically. Similarly, no one wants to be unhappy in family life or worldly life. But by the laws of nature, unhappiness and distress are forced upon everyone. To become dependent on another for one's maintenance is very degrading. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, everyone should live independently. Only the Shudras are unable to live independently. They are obliged to serve someone for maintenance. It is said in the Shastras, Kalo, Shudra, Sambhava. In this age of Kali, everyone is dependent on another's mercy for the maintenance of the body. Therefore, everyone is classified as a Shudra. In the 12th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is said that in Kali Yuga, the government will levy taxes without reciprocally benefiting the citizens. Anavrishja vinakshanti durbhiksha kadapiditaha. In this age there will also be a shortage of rain. Therefore a scarcity of food will arise, and the citizens will be very much harassed by government taxation. In this way the citizens will abandon their attempts to lead a peaceful life and will leave their homes and hearths and go to the forest in sheer disappointment. Now, in America right now, it may not seem like it's like that so much, but we are hearing this book was brought into this age that we're living in now 5,000 years ago. This was written down 5,000 years ago. And now the symptoms that we're seeing all over the world, not just here, are coming out, are coming true, even though these things were written a long, long time ago. You know, the birth of Buddha, for instance, which is about 2,600 years ago, was predicted by this book, by this history book. And the name of the parents, the place of the birth, and what he would do is described in the Bhagavatam. And like that, the age we're living in now will go for many hundreds of thousands of years. And the symptoms of that time, before the end of that age and before the motive of goodness comes back and people can live a little bit more naturally again, after we kind of squeeze the earth of all she's worth and leave her kind of without any resources. If you just leave it alone, if you leave her alone, just like if you cut yourself and you leave it alone, it heals. This is the nature of material existence, the material world. So the earth is like that. If the human beings would just leave it alone, it would heal itself. And that happens at the end of this age. But in the meantime, things get worse and worse, as they are now, getting worse and worse. The weather patterns, the inequality, the production of food for cash crops rather than, healthy, nutritious food. They grow everything over here, and they have to have a big industry to move from here over to here. In the meantime, the same earth could be used to grow what they need to eat, but no, they have to bring it from over here to over here, right? And then this whole thing, and then they have to genetically, engineer it in order that it won't get this, it won't get that. I heard one of my dear godbrothers give a lecture over the in a recording, and he was talking about how he was living in India for a long time. And in India, when you go to the fruit market, in general, some of the fruit is really, really good, and some of it is not so good, because that's nature. When things come off the tree, it's not everything exactly the same. In America and Western developed places, they have methods of making everything looks exactly the same shape, same thing, but it tastes kind of like plastic compared to tree-ripened fruit. Of course, now they have the tendency towards organic food, and it's, there's a lot of us, not just us, meaning our movement, but a lot of human beings, young people especially, are beginning to see through these things and want to live a more natural life. So these books that we're reading describe the material world not in a way to make us depressed because of the way it is, but to show us that you can't really make a permanent solution here, but there is a world beyond this world which is eternal, and the soul, which we all are, the soul, we're not the body. We say in every language of the world, in English we say my body, in Spanish we say mi cuerpo, and in other languages say something else, but it means there's something different between me and my body. But we're not getting educated about who that person is. We're just thinking about the body and trying to absorb ourselves in bodily consciousness. And therefore, these things that are being described here in this section by Jada Bharat, a great liberated soul, are actually true. And when we hear them, it's meant to kind of shake us, wake us up. You're sleepy and you're in the classroom and somebody has to come and, wake up. You have to do it yourself to get yourself to wake up and listen attentively so you can learn something. So the material world is like this, and we're all going through this. Birth and death, and birth and death, and birth and death. Or we go to bed at night and we have a dream, and everything's really nice. You're flying through the air, or you just struck it rich, or got a nice whatever, liaison, whatever. But then you wake up. Oh no, that was so nice. You didn't go back to sleep and try to go back there again. You can't go back there again because it's a dream. It's like, that's what it means when it talks about the mirage of material existence. There's always some out front. Yeah, I'm crying. I want to stay up at night. I want to watch TV like my mom and dad. Yeah, when you get older, then you can. Then when you get older, then it's like, yeah, but I want to drive a car. And then when it's older, then, yeah, but I want to, and everything, it's okay, just and then at the end, it's okay, then you retire. And then you can stop work and enjoy. And by this time you're like this, you can't do anything. Many times. Or all you can do is get into a Winnebago and park it in the sunset at some, at some park somewhere and just look, that's life. That's actually material existence. And we're going along and we're thinking but then we're going to get, oh no, yeah, but then we're going to, oh no. It's like that. So, but we're eternal. The body's changing. You were all, this big at one time. You came out of your mother's wombs, all of us, we were this big. Anyways, right? Where's that body now? Every single cell, scientifically, every single cell's changed. He probably said the same thing, because it's kind of like the truth, and we keep trying to repeat it so that we'll get it, Like sometimes when you did something really bad and your mom said, stop that, because we need to hear a few times. And these things are really deep and really ingrained in us, so we have to hear it. Therefore we do this every day. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Text 7. Sometimes being defeated or plundered by a superior powerful agent, a living entity loses all his possessions. He then becomes very morose. Just go to San Francisco now. You have to have, if you're making over $147,000, you're in poverty. You can't get a place to live. Did you know that? That's the line of poverty right now in San Francisco in the city. Sometimes being defeated or plundered by a superior powerful agent, a living entity loses all his possessions. But I'm making $100,000 a year. No, you're out on the street. You have to pay $150,000 just for the apartment, or $2 million. He then becomes very morose, and lamenting their loss, he sometimes becomes unconscious. Sometimes he imagines a great palatial city in which he desires to live happily with his family members and riches. He thinks himself fully satisfied, if this is possible. But such so-called happiness continues only for a moment. Purport. The word Gandharva Puram is very significant in this verse. Sometimes in the forest, a very big castle appears, and this is called a castle in the air. Actually, this castle does not exist anywhere but in one's imagination. This is called Gandharvapur. In the material forest, the conditioned soul sometimes contemplates great castles and skyscrapers, and he wastes his energy for such things, hoping to live in them very peaceful with his family forever. However, the laws of nature do not allow this. When he enters such castles, he temporarily thinks that he is very happy, even though his happiness is impermanent. His happiness may last for a few years, but because the owner of the castle has to leave the castle at the time of death, everything is eventually lost. This is the way of worldly transactions. Such happiness is described by Vidyapati as the happiness one derives upon seeing a drop of water in the desert. The desert is heated by scorching sunshine, and if we want to reduce the desert temperature, we need huge amounts of water, millions and millions of gallons. What effect will one drop have? Water certainly has value, but one drop of water cannot reduce the heat of the desert. In this material world, everyone is ambitious, but the heat is very scorching. What will an imaginary castle in the air do to help? Srila Vidyapati has therefore sung, Tatatala, Saikate, Varibindu Sama, Suttamitu Ramani Samaje. The happiness of family life, friends, and society is compared to a drop of water in the scorching desert. The entire material world is busy trying to attain happiness, because happiness is the prerogative of a living being. So let's talk about this for a second. Happiness is the prerogative of a living being. What does that mean? We have some ideas?
That's what we search for.
Yeah, but why do we search for it?
Because we think it's not like inside and something exterior is going to bring us that.
It's because inside of us, we want happiness. We want happiness because that's who we are. So the Vedas explain to us that there's two kinds of energies. One of them is spiritual and one of them is material. And the spiritual energy is the internal energy of God, and the material energy is the external energy of God. The external energy is separated energy. It's like if I'm recording this onto the Facebook, and then when I leave the room, if it's recorded, then you can turn it on and it will sound and look just like me, but it's not me because it's separated from me. But it couldn't be there unless I was there to put it onto the tape or to the digital device, right? So that's called the separated energy of God. So there's energies of the Supreme Lord, and there's a very detailed, sophisticated, scientific explanation for how that happens. Like when we look at ourselves in the mirror, for instance, and we see a form that looks like us, but it's not us. It's just the light reflecting off our body onto the mirror. You can touch it and there's no warmth, there's no feeling, and if you move your right hand, the left hand moves, everything's backwards. And if you move away from the mirror, the form goes away. So it's temporary. So these are the principles of reflection. So the Vedas describe that this material world is actually a reflection. I mean, there's a book, there's a verse in the Bible that says that man is created in the image of God. And it's true. It's actually true. We're not saying that we have the only way and nobody else knows anything. We're not saying that. But what we are saying is that there are literatures, there are sounds that describe the history of the universe and the creation of the universe in very, very scientific and detailed, comprehensive ways, which can satisfy more our intelligence, modern intelligence, which is educated in these ways. We need to hear more about just it, and then God said it's this. And that's all right, that's true. But when we get the details, it'll help us. It'll help our faith. It'll help our understanding. And then when we hear about the spiritual world, and we hear about the form of God, and we hear about what's going on there, and we hear how that situation is reflected into the material energy, then it makes more sense. Why we're looking for happiness. Why we don't want to die. Why we want to know everything. And the karma of the world's human society now, as a result of all of us together wanting to know more, the internet came into being. As a result of our desires, the material energy has satisfied that desire to a certain extent. And now we can walk down the street and, Siri, what's this? Okay. Where's such and such? Oh, okay. And it's like when I was growing up, it was completely different. Completely different. Didn't have these things at all. Those of you who haven't seen a world like that, it may sound a little strange. Well, we're hearing about a world that was a long, long, long time ago. But still the principles are the same. That's the point. So the soul, the form of the soul has a form. We have a spiritual body, we have a subtle body, which is the mind, the intelligence, what we dream in, what we think about, what we aspire with, what we desire with. And we have a gross body. The gross body is made of earth and water and fire and air and ether. Subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Can't see the mind, but we know it's there. We talk about it every day. Oh, my mind is disturbed. You have a beautiful mind. We haven't seen a person's mind, but the way they think, the way they act, we can see that. So that's the spiritual body. The spiritual body is made of different energy, spiritual energy. And the essence of the spiritual energy is eternity, knowledge, and bliss. These are energies, just like earth and water and fire and air. And the spiritual world is made up of those energies. So there's forms like all the forms we see, men and women and buildings and trees and plants and birds and all the things that go on here, family, everything is going on there in the spiritual world. But there's no material energy. Here, we're spiritual. The spiritual body is inside, and the material body is inert. And we're having to lug it around, And you ever notice how you're having to lug around your body, Anyway, wait until you get old, then you'll understand even better. But it's a fact, we got to go to the bathroom. Let's decide we don't want to do that. Too much trouble. It's messy. It's not so clean. It's nasty. But we have to do that. Therefore, we're not free. We think we're free. We're being made to think we're free by the material energy, but we're not free. We can't go and do whatever we want, And material energy. The material energy is limited. It's restricting us. It's the nature of the material world that the soul is restricted. And now it's being made more complicated because now there's different, nation states, and you got to have a passport, and then you got to have somebody in the, the duanas or the customs and the immigration, and now it's a big deal. You try to immigrate nowadays. It's easy before, now it's getting more difficult, and it's going to get more difficult. It's going to get more complicated because that's the nature of karma. It's the nature of material existence. But if you learn the art of living on a spiritual platform with this knowledge, if you practice remembering and noting what you see and what you feel and what you think and what you do, and through this knowledge, then you'll be able to see what's actually going on, and you won't become as disturbed by it. We have this experience already. I've been doing this for 46 years. How old are you?
I'm 19. 22.
I've been doing this for 46 years, and I'm telling you, it's getting better and better and better. It's not going away. The knowledge and the vision and the ability to see these things that we're talking about, it's not just like it's talking about here, some castle in the sky, it's a horse egg, It's not like that. It's real. And it's been going on for a very long time, and it continues to go on. And the human soul, especially, well, all souls are spiritual. But when we're in a body of a human being, we can do something about it. The animals can't do as much about it. They're just bound by very heavier laws, and they can't think and organize themselves in the way that we can. Read philosophy and try to understand and try to improve ourselves and try to... So when we leave our bodies, the soul is carried to another body by the mind. Just like even in this body, we've moved from one body to another, and it changes how it looks, and it changes what it likes according to the body. When we were 4 years old, we didn't think about doing much, just running around and looking at things, and playing, and then when you get a little older, then you want to do different things. You get older, you want to do different things. So the body's changing, but the soul's still the same. We just want to play. But we just play in a different way when the body changes, and we get more facilities to do more things. That's the basic philosophy of spiritual life, of spiritual existence, is to understand that we're actually not the body, and that this material world is a sham. What we really want is eternal. And the forms of this material existence are not eternal, and therefore we're in anxiety, because we don't know what's going to happen next. That's the truth. So let's hear more about what's going to happen next. The entire material world is busy trying to attain happiness, because happiness is the prerogative of the living being. That's where we left off. Unfortunately, due to falling in contact with the material world, the living entity simply struggles for existence. Even if one becomes happy for a while, a very powerful enemy may plunder everything. There are many instances in which big businessmen suddenly become paupers in the street. Yet the nature of material existence is that such foolish people are attracted to these transactions, and they forget the real business of self-realization. Text 8. Sometimes the merchant in the forest wants to climb the hills and mountains, but due to insufficient footwear, his feet are pricked by small stone fragments and by thorns on the mountain. Being pricked by them, he becomes very aggrieved. Sometimes a person who is very attached to his family becomes overwhelmed with hunger, and due to his miserable condition, he becomes furious with his family members. Purport. If you need to find the place,
Yes.
did you lose your place? It's 5:13:8. Got it? Purport. The ambitious conditioned soul wants to be very happy in this material world with his family, but he is compared to a traveler in the forest who desires to climb a hill full of thorns and small stones. As stated in the previous verse, the happiness derived from society, friendship, and love is like a drop of water in the scorching heat of the desert. One may want to become very great and powerful in society, but this is like attempting to climb a hill full of thorns. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares one's family to high mountains. Becoming happy in their association is like a hungry man's endeavoring to climb a mountain full of thorns. Almost 99.9% of the population is unhappy in family life, despite all the attempts being made to satisfy the family members. Nowadays, when you get married, you gotta have a nuptial agreement. When we just in case we split up, we have to have on paper who gets what and what happens and this and that. Right? There's no question of actual love and actual eternal life and taking a vow till death do us part. It's becoming something. That's what it means. House in the sky. In the Western countries, due to the dissatisfaction of the family members, there's actually no family life. There are many cases of divorce, and out of dissatisfaction, the children leave the protection of their parents. Especially in this age of Kali, family life is being reduced. Everyone is becoming self-centered, because that is the law of nature. We were called the me generation. We were the first, called me generation. The baby boomers. Right? Now what is it called? Same thing, but in different words. What is it called now? Anyway.
Gen Z.
Huh?
Generation Z.
Yeah, it was me, X, Y, Z, millennial. Anyway, and we're becoming more and more, we have more and more a feeling of, entitlement. Entitlement. We're entitled to this, we're entitled to that, we're entitled to this. And we lose the sense of service and the spirit of service and the rewards that come from helping others rather than putting ourselves always in the center. Everyone is becoming self-centered because that is the law of nature. Even if one has sufficient money to maintain a family, the situation is such that no one is happy in family life. Consequently, according to the Varnashram institution, one has to retire from family life in middle age. Pancha shordvam vanam brajet. One should voluntarily retire from family life at the age of 50 or so, or go to Vrindavan or a forest. This is recommended by Srila Prahlad Maharaj in Bhagavatam 7.5.5. Tad sadhumanye sudavarya dehinam sada samud bigna diyam asad graha. This is Sanskrit language. This is the root language of all languages, Sanskrit. Hitvatma paraptam grihamandakupam vanam gato yad daram ashrayeta. There is no benefit in transferring from one forest to another. One must go to the Vrindavan forest and take shelter of Govinda. Govinda is one of the names of Krishna, the original form, the Supreme Person, whom we are all meant to serve and love. Here in the material world, we're in the center. In the spiritual world, he's in the center. And his consort, Radharani, they're in the center. That's our constitutional position, to serve. Everyone is serving. Every living being, not just human beings, every living being is serving. The birds are getting the insects off the plant so that we can eat the fruit off the trees, and the trees are giving us, giving us the oxygen, taking other energy out. There's an ecosystem, and every single living being is participating in it, and therefore every living being is providing some service. Even there's germs and other living entities inside our bodies helping us, keep healthy or get rid of disease, or even sometimes get disease, but they're getting somehow or other, every living being serving someone else. There is no benefit in transferring from one forest to another. One must go to the Vrindavan forest and take shelter of Govinda. That will make one happy. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is therefore constructing a Krishna Balaram temple to invite its members, as well as outsiders, to come and live peacefully in a spiritual atmosphere. That will help one become elevated to the transcendental world and return home, back to Godhead. Another sentence in this verse is very significant. Kautumbika krudyati vai janaya. When one's mind is disturbed in so many ways, he satisfies himself by becoming angry with his poor wife and children. The wife and children are naturally dependent on the father, but the father, being unable to maintain the family properly, becomes mentally distressed and therefore chastises the family members unnecessarily, as stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam, Achchina dada dravina yasyanti gidikananam. Being disgusted with family life, one separates from one family by divorce or some other means. If one has to separate, why not separate willingly? Systematic separation is better than forced separation. Forced separation cannot make anyone happy, but by mutual consent or by the Vedic arrangement, one must separate from family affairs at a certain age and fully depend on Krishna. This makes one's life successful. We can ask questions pretty soon. We're getting to the point where we can ask questions, just in case you have some. Okay, we'll stop there. 7:30, that's almost an hour. Okay, now we have what is called open mic session. There, we got a microphone. And if something stuck in your mind that you heard that you either want to reflect on yourself or you want to discuss more for better understanding, or you want to just ask questions or whatever, this is your time.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so you know how you talked about...
Wait, you've got a mic. Yes.
Into it?
Yeah, you can talk. You don't have to have it. No, you don't have to have it right there. You can just, like here. Smile. There's about 4,000 people watching you.
Okay.
Or will watch you.
So, for example, you know how you mentioned wanting to separate from, I guess, okay, I'm just going to say it how,
Go
I
ahead,
was thinking.
just say it. That's the only way
because
to
it will
get
make
it
more
out.
sense. Okay, so lately, I feel like I don't want to play the game. So, society's game.
Welcome to the club.
And it's frustrating because I feel like when I tell some people that, they don't kind of get it. They just think that I am lazy and I don't want to play part of it. But I just really don't. I don't crave it. I don't want it.
Therefore, if you associate with those who feel the same way and are seeing the same thing, you will get a huge relief. Huge relief.
But I feel like, I don't know if at the same time it's egotistical to think that. I don't want to be part of it.
There's real ego and there's false ego. You can't get rid of ego. We're a person. We're eternal persons. You can't stop being a person. I mean, people do crazy things to stop being persons. They take drugs, they drink, they even commit suicide sometimes or do something crazy so they can be put away for life, just to try to get away from all this that you're talking about. And it's interesting because very interesting because what we read tonight just fits what you're saying. Because this is the game that everybody's trying to play. They're trying to enjoy themselves in material existence, and they're playing a game. Everybody's got this smile, but if you just open the curtain, and you'll see that everybody's actually wondering what's going on here.
I don't know. It's overwhelming because, like,
listen, we've been here for a very long time, and some of us have done devotional service before. When I was living on top of a mountain in California, after having come to the point where you're at right now, only I just said, that's it, and I just went out to the mountain, and there was like 100 people living, and I thought, okay, now we're free. But I had this little, it had a little, small library of spiritual books, and I was trying to figure it out, And then 2 people within a week of each other brought me, without me going anywhere else, 2 books by the same author. And that person ended up being my spiritual master. And I was praying and doing austerities and studying and meditating and doing all these things, and there was a thread running through all those things that I was reading, there was something similar running through it, and that kept me going, but there was no concrete explanation. I wanted to know, okay, if God's the source of everything, then what does he look like? Where is he? And nobody had that answer. And when you don't have an answer, they tend to speculate that God's not a person, or he's just an energy, or the spiritual world is just a light. And somehow or other, this all comes to being by chance. And chemicals get together, and then all of a sudden there's life, and then here we are. I mean, hello, I couldn't buy it. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. Everything that I saw in life that was of any consequence, that was of any sophistication, that was organized, had an intelligence behind it. I didn't see anything in my life that didn't have some intelligence behind it. And so I just didn't buy it. But still, I could see that the answer was there, but I couldn't get it myself. So then one day, I got these, not one day, within a week, I got these 2 books, and they were the same author. When I saw that they were the same author, the tears just came out of my eyes, just like you were just crying just now. That's natural. It's natural. And then, I said, this is too much, this was like mystical. Something's happening here. So I went up and got my friend out of bed. I said, Clint, it was in the middle of the night. I was working graveyard shift at some job just to make ends meet. That's when I looked at the books for the first time. And I went up and I said, Clint, we got to do something about this. We always talked about these kinds of things, but this is too much, what just happened. This is beyond coincidence, beyond anything we've ever talked about before. He said, okay. So we got the magazine out. One magazine came with one of the books. So we were about 70 miles from Los Angeles, and the magazine advertised the Los Angeles temple as the world headquarters. So you want to find out about something? Hey, go to the world headquarters, right? But we didn't like LA for obvious reasons. If you've ever been to LA, you may understand what I just said. But anyway, we like San Francisco. So we got the address in the magazine. We went 400 miles out of our way to San Francisco, and we came to a address which was a storefront that was boarded up. There was nothing there because they had moved. I don't remember how long, a year or something before. Dead end. Now what to do? I was carrying the book in my hand. I want answers. And then I looked down the street, and then I figured out that I was living 4 doors up Stanton Street. You know San Francisco? No.
I've been there once.
Yeah, Haight-Ashbury. You heard of Haight-Ashbury? No, the Haight, 1967. No, okay. That's a long time. Beatles.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so I looked down the street, and there was a devotee. He looked like me, and he was passing out magazines. So I went running up to him, Hare Krishna, because I read it in the book. And he went, Hare Krishna. Nobody went up to you and said Hare Krishna in those days. I mean, that was 1972. That's a long time ago. That's longer than some people can remember. Anyway, so he said to me, he saw how I had the book in mine. He says, "Oh, you must have come to hear Srila Prabhupada speak tonight." I said, "What do you mean?" Because in the book, in the cover of the book, the word Prabhupada wasn't there. We used that word, that honorific title later on. Now it's everywhere. But before, in the first books, that title wasn't there. It was just Bhaktivedanta Swami. So I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, the author of that book you're carrying, he just arrived in San Francisco." There you go. I mean, the chances of that happening were zero. And I was just tears flowing, you know. And I went to the temple, and they kind of poured me into the car, and then poured me out into the temple. And I got into the temple, and I just went, that was it. It was like the whole atmosphere, the fragrance, the everyone I met, the people, it was like different. It was different. Everyone was like me. I said, my God, you know, where were you in, you know, Altamont in 19 something or other, you know? It seemed like I knew everybody, but I didn't. But I did. Right? So then within just a few hours, I was sitting in front of Srila Prabhupada, you know, the author of these books that we're reading, and my spiritual master. So sometimes, the point I'm taking off on this point, that I'm developing this point, that sometimes when we've done devotional life before in a previous body, depending on how much of it we've done, it clicks, we understand easier than someone who hasn't had so much experience, but it's coming for the first time, or maybe for the second time, or something like that. And so you've always been like this.
In a sense, but lately, like the past year or more.
I can tell you, without going one step further, you've always been like this. You've always been a little different, and never quite kind of got with it. The game.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
That's the way it is. Just like me.
I felt off.
Just like him. Just like him. Just like her. Just like him. And all of us, to one degree or another.
I know, lately, like, this past week, I was just talking to her about, like, I just want to leave and just, like, leave everything. But I know if I'm leaving from place to place, it doesn't matter because I'm just replacing the environment. I'm not, like, it's not
hey, welcome
inside,
to the club.
You know?
We used to call it getting on the road. We used to call it keep on trucking. And we just...
You want to save up money and just leave.
I know. But I'm just telling you...
I just want to go for a week.
No, but
get away,
but what I'm telling you, and what this book is telling you, what we're trying to tell you, is it doesn't work.
Yeah.
As long as you're in a material body, as long as you're in the material world, wherever you go, there's going to be something.
Mm-hmm.
Except if you go to the spiritual world, where everybody is actually trying to find out who they are, and are finding out how to do it, and do it together. That's the spiritual world. It's not exactly the same as the spiritual world, but it's close. It's closer than anything else you can get in this material world. We're offering that to you. So the first thing is, just start to come regularly. Come to the programs, come to the readings, come to the kirtans, come to the festivals, associate with the devotees. Find out. No joke. I didn't look back. This was more than 46 years ago. I got those books, I touched them, and I understood. And then I met Prabhupada just a couple of days later. Impossible. He was in San Francisco 3 days within 4 years. And I arrived on the same day as he did. That's not possible. So when I read that we're being guided in the heart, there's two souls, not one soul. There's the individual soul, that's us. When I pinch myself, you can't feel it. When you pinch yourself, I can't feel it. We're in an individual soul inside the body. We can experience everything, or more or less, not everything, but what's going on in the body we can experience, but not out there we can't experience in the same way. But the super soul is an expansion of Krishna, an expansion of God, and he's in everyone's heart, and feels it when we pinch, and when we pinch, when any one of us pinches, he feels it. And he's the guidance, the upadrishta. What is that word? Upadrishta. He's the witness and the sanctioner, and he knows what we want because he's going along with us. Like I was saying, the soul goes from one body to another. The super soul accompanies us. What kind of friend is that? You know, you're trying to get away. That means not everyone's your friend. And after a while, you learn that hardly anybody's your real friend, because their heart, surit. There's different kinds of friends in Sanskrit language. One of them is surit. Su means good, and rit means heart. Not fair-weathered friends. Not when I'm doing what the other person likes to do, they're my friend, and when I stop doing it, they're no longer my friends. Meaning they were just a friend of that thing that we were doing together. Not really my friend. So you need to be with spiritual persons to be able to taste that. And even then in the material world, we still go through things, you know, because we're still in a material body, we're still in the material world, but we're practicing. We're practicing, we're getting some relief. And that's the difference between spiritual existence and material existence. There's an ability to go to the spiritual side and taste relief. In the material energy, there is no relief. Sometimes there's a little bit for some time, but lately, within the last 10, 20, 30 years, it's getting harder and harder to find. It's a pattern. Material existence is a pattern. No matter what the political system, whatever the economic system, eventually a few people figure out how to get more and more, and the rest of them get left behind. It's a cycle. And then there's a revolution, whether it be Russia, France, Spain, Germany, now America. It's America's turn, you know, biggest, most rich country in the history of the world, but now the difference between the poor and the rich is like bigger than any time in the history of the world. And it can't go on like that. It just can't. It's not sustainable. Therefore, the system that Krishna set up for how to organize things and how to, you know, conduct ourselves and how to think and how to feel and how to will and how to act in such a way that we can all feel together and help each other go back to the spiritual world where we belong, that gives a real sense of taste, a real sense of being. It's not a game anymore. It stops being a game. I will read to you what knowledge is. Right? Ready?
Ready.
You sure?
Yes.
Here's what knowledge is. You ready? Sitting down? You sure? Ready? Okay, here it goes. Humility. Pridelessness. Nonviolence. Tolerance. Simplicity. Approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Cleanliness. Steadiness. Self-control. Renunciation of the objects of sense gratification. Absence of false ego. The perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. Detachment. Freedom from the entanglement from children, wife, home, and the rest. That's why you want to take off. Even-mindedness amidst pleasant and unpleasant events. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. That's Krishna speaking. Aspiring to live in a solitary place. Detachment from the general mass of people. Accepting the importance of self-realization. And philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever they may be, is ignorance. So the whole world is living in ignorance. if you met a person who had all those qualities, or who were going there, we'd be in a different place. And the qualities that those persons have in the spiritual world are also described very nicely. You ready? No. Not?
Yes.
Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness. We don't even know what that means. Fearlessness. To be fearless. To not be afraid of what's going to happen next. Purification of one's existence. Cultivation of spiritual knowledge. Charity. Self-control. Performance of sacrifice. Study of the Vedas. Austerity, simplicity. Some of these are overlapping. Non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So, when you get up in the pulpit in a church or a synagogue or mosque or whatever, they just talk mainly about politics, economics, prosperity. That's it. These qualities and these activities are getting lost, completely lost. And even we struggle with these because we're in the material world still. But we have guidance from personalities who are extremely gifted and deep and spiritually realized, who pass this knowledge down from before the universe was created. This is a Veda. Veda means knowledge. There's no beginning of knowledge. Knowledge is eternal. And it comes from one universe to another, one creation to another, and brought into the material world, and then it's spread through this sound. From one liberated person to another, to another, to another, to another, like that. So there's a way out. There is a way out. There is a way to live without all that fear and anxiety and, not having to play a game all the time. To be straight, forward, honest, clear. And as you take this process of hearing and trying to apply it in our own characters, and organize ourselves in a way to help others find this out, it's so meaningful. It satisfies our spirit like nothing else can. This is what real compassion is, to help other people come out of this, ignorance that is causing us to feel always pinned in and discriminated against, and we're not on you're playing a game where there's no equal playing field. But if you see the soul by practice, by hearing, learning this knowledge, and looking out at the world through that knowledge that you yourself have assimilated, then you can see what's the true and what's not true. You can see what to do, what not to do. You can see what's liberating and what's binding. And then you can live free. It's not easy. We're not trying to, it's not a bed of roses. It's difficult because we've been in this material world for a long time.
It's like deconditioning.
Yes. Therefore we are called conditioned souls. But there's a systematic, explanation of everything in these books that Srila Prabhupada brought to us. There is a source of real knowledge, but it's very, very difficult to find now. Very difficult. And everyone's disappointed. Almost everyone's getting cheated in one way or another. And all the people that are making all the money, they're just putting out the advertisements, making people feel like you have to do this, you have to wear this, you have to look like this. If you don't look like this, you're like nothing. And then people take, I'm nothing here. And then they take something, and then they feel like there's something, and then when it wears off, they feel like they're worse than nothing. And there you have it. Material existence. 21st century style. So the truth hurts, and it also liberates. If you have jaundice, jaundice is a liver disease, and it makes your skin yellow, and it makes your taste buds change, and then sugars taste very bitter or makes you nauseous. But in Ayurveda, in the Ayurvedic system, the cure to jaundice is a kind of medicine that tastes sweet, but when you've got the jaundice, it tastes bitter. You have to keep taking it, and it keeps taking it. And then eventually you taste the sweetness of the sugar when the disease is gone. So spiritual existence is like that. In the beginning, it may seem like poison to hear, but at the end, it's like nectar. And sense gratification is like nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. And ignorance is like poison from the beginning to end. It's miserable from beginning to end. So I think that that's a beautiful question that you asked, and I think it took great courage to say what you just did. Very, very courageous. An honest person. So, there's no pill that you can take. I mean, there's a lot of people out there telling you there is a pill you can take to give you ecstasy or whatever. But there's no pill you can take. But there's a process. There's a process. There's a life to live to give you actual spiritual taste and spiritual understanding. And once you get it, there's nothing else to do but to try to share it. It's the nature. It's the nature of existence. When you get something nice, share it. Then you feel better.
That's probably because ever since I was little, I always liked helping people. And I don't know, I would like to hear people out and give advice. And I always feel like, if I'm a psychiatrist, then I'll be able to do that.
Natural.
Yeah.
It's natural.
Yeah.
So there's one verse. I'm just helping you to understand that you found something real. There's a verse here in the 17th chapter, 16th verse, that talks about austerity of the mind. And the first austerity of the mind is, guess what? Satisfaction. Now austerity, when we think about doing austerity or penance, we usually think about doing something that makes me feel not so good to get something better in the future, right? You practice doing something, you give up playing to practice something to become an expert musician or whatever, athlete or whatever. So the reason satisfaction is an austerity is because the nature of the material mind in the material world is to be dissatisfied. It's an austerity to be satisfied. So here's the answer. Satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. Purport. To make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. It should be so trained that it can always be thinking of doing good for others. It's exactly what you just said. It's already here. The way you're thinking what you want is already here in more depth and detail than you can imagine. Okay, so give it a go. Take this book, read it, come back, take prasadam, dance and chant. You know, hear, associate, find out more about this Krishna consciousness. And then there will be more than hope. There'll be actually relief.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. What else?
Well, it's not. It's not really related to
Whatever. It's all related. You can just hold it. You can just hold it. It's okay.
So, I just got done reading a book called The Alchemist. I'm pretty sure
The
most of
Alchemist.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, well, I learned that everyone is one, correct?
Wake up. Yeah. Everyone is one. Yes.
Right? So, if everyone is one, I'm so sorry. So, like, are we God?
This is a really good question. This is you hit the jackpot. So what she's talking about goes here.
Right.
See, here's the problem. We are one, but we're not one altogether, one person. Like we're all Americans.
Mm-hmm.
We're all human beings. We're one in that sense. But we're different at the same time. So the soul is one in quality with God, but different in quantity. The sun is the source of the sunshine, and the sunshine goes everywhere. And the sunshine has two qualities, heat and light. So the sun and the heat and the light are one. But the quality of the photon and the sun, the quantity, is completely different. But the quality is the same. So we are parts and parcels, atomic parts and parcels of God. It's not that if you put us all together, you become God. And when we're all separated, then there is no God. Until we come back together again. It's not logical. And it's an actual philosophical concept that's been in existence for a very long time. And the whole world is now infected by it. Mm-hmm. And therefore everyone's confused. How can you be God? God is the supreme being. Are you the supreme being? No. Then how can you think you're God? Well, it's just I forgot. Well, if you're God, how come you forget? If you're actually God and you're in control of everything and you make the sun come up and this and that, and then how can you forget? It's illusion.
Right.
It's an illusion. Not only it's an illusory concept, Lord Chaitanya made a very strong statement about this philosophy. He said, if you hear it submissively and take it and accept it, your spiritual life is doomed. Because you're always trying to be something that you're not. Mm. And that's why you're confused. That's why you were thinking, well, if we're one, does that mean we're God? But you know that by instinct, you know you're not God.
Right.
But if you take that philosophy and keep hearing it from the wrong person, you'll eventually think it, that you are. And then what happens? No one can tell you anything. Because when you're God, there's nobody superior to you. And that's the purpose of that philosophy, to diminish or to weaken the authority, the sense of there being anyone above you or superior to you.
Would you call it like an ego trip?
Yeah, a false ego trip. There's false ego and there's real ego. The real ego is the soul. The false ego is the body, the identification with the body.
So, would it be like, okay, since we can't be God itself, but we could be like vessels, right? You know how you said that we're all here. Like, have you ever heard that quote that says we're all just walking each other home? So we're walking each other back to ourselves. You know, like our not self, like body self, but I guess spiritual self.
Yes, but what is that spiritual self? I mean, these are nice ideas. I'm not. Don't get me wrong. They're nice ideas, but they're not practical and they're not concrete.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I told you I had all those books and I was reading all these books and there was a thread running through it that sounded similar. So that kept me going, but I couldn't. I was never satisfied.
That's why I felt lost too.
Yes, but once you get the idea clear from an authority who's actually hearing from an authority who was there, who saw the beginning, who's coming from the spiritual world, and who knows what's going on there, then you can get it. You can't get it just by thinking about it.
And you have to practice it too.
Yes.
It's not. Like,
Yes.
It's not something you learn. You just hear it and you know it. You have to know it. Like,
Yes, but you have to. But no, yeah. But in order to, you have to hear from the right source to know it. But because you have the capacity to know it, and the source has the ability to give it, then the picture comes. Just like anything else here. Unless you have a transmitter and you have a receiver that's working properly, then you get the picture. If you have a transmitter and the receiver are not working, both working properly, you don't get the picture.
Because sometimes when I try to talk to people about like materialism, they don't. Because I want to try to practice being minimalist. Because I know that I don't need a lot to be happy. But when I tell that to somebody, they look at me like,
you're nuts.
yeah, like what?
What are you?
You know, like
what are you
why
nuts?
would you not want to have like a $30,000 car or like a mansion? When like they just think that I'm just settling because I don't want to work for it. But it's really like I don't find a purpose.
Escapist. I remember when we used to go out and distribute books in the airports in America in the 70s. One thing that we used to hear, there were two things we used to hear. One of them was, "Why don't you get a job?" But then when the persons who were smart watched us going out and meeting people, never met them before, and talking to them for 5 minutes, and they're going away with this in their hand, having given us something for it, and they would look and then they'd come and ask us, "Hey, would you like a job with us?" That was pretty incredible what you just did. I've been watching you for the last hour or two. Hey, we need salesmen like you. You want to come over here? We'll give you a real, right? So first of all, hear it, learn it, do it, and then share it. That's it. That's the way back to God now. Before, it was meditation. This is another thing. These books that say you're God, that's one kind of illusion. The other kind of illusion is you can sit and meditate and stop your mind. The goal is to stop the mind. Stop the world, I want to get off, that kind of thing. Can't stop your mind. Not possible. When you go to sleep at night, you dream. You're always active. The soul is always active. You can't stop it. You can't become God by stopping your mind. This is the grossest illusion, packaged and presented as the absolute truth. But the truth is that God is both impersonal and personal at the same time. Remember I was talking about the principle of reflection? Well, this is a little deep. but I can see that I got some persons with spiritual intelligence here, so I'm going to tell you this. There's a way that the form of God is amalgamated by reflection into the material energy, and all of the codes of information that gets, the things that determine what we look like, when man and woman unite and then another body comes out, or a lizard, or a whatever the kind of body it is, that's what kind of body comes out. It's not that you have a lizard uniting with a fox and you get something else, a hen. It doesn't work like that. The codes, there's codes of information that determine what we look like and what everything looks like and how everything is organized. Those codes are reflected from the body of God into the material energy. And there's a description of how that happens. And when you read it and hear it, you will light up, because it explains everything in detail. If you learn this book is, we heard tonight about 10, 15 verses. There's 18,000 verses of this book. And if you learn this book, it will get the equivalent of 5 PhDs. Because you'll know everything you need to know to get out of this material world and go back to the spiritual world and help others go back to the spiritual world as well. And the happiness that you get from doing that, you cannot calculate. You cannot imagine it. And it's not the kind of happiness that just comes, there's a flash, and then it goes, and then you got to figure out another thing to do, try to get it back. No, it keeps on going. It doesn't stop. There's obstacles, there's problems. We're in the material world, but there's always an increase as long as you're sincere and you continue to hear and to chant, to serve, to remember. Yeah, it's real. Yeah, and that's why you feel like you do it when you hear it. It makes perfect sense because it's actually the absolute truth. God's a person, we're persons.